There is this universally recognized feeling that hits you right when you first wake up in the morning.
Oh, yeah. The morning autopilot.
Right, exactly. And yet, it is something we rarely actually talk about openly. I mean, you open your eyes, the alarm is ringing that exact same familiar tone, and you just begin to go through the
The
motions.
same motions you have gone through for as long as you can remember.
Yeah. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed, you feel the cold floor against your bare feet, and you walk into the kitchen, you hear the coffee machine whir to life, you pour that morning cup, and you step right back into the daily routine.
Mhm.
But as you are just standing there, taking that first sip, maybe staring out the window or looking down at your phone, there is this profound, almost suffocating sense of stagnation.
Just settling really heavy in your chest.
Yes, a heavy, dense feeling. Why is that?
Well, it is the distinct sensation of operating on a hidden internal autopilot. I mean, you are entirely present in the physical sense, right?
Right, your body is there.
Your body is making the coffee, your hands are physically holding the mug, but fundamentally, your consciousness is just absent. You are simply doing the work. You are checking the necessary boxes of existence.
Yeah, and the wild thing is you might even be achieving what society deems as, conventional milestones of success.
Exactly. You have the job, you have the living arrangement, you have the responsibilities, yet beneath all of that outward frantic motion, there is this lingering emptiness.
It really feels like a pervasive trap.
It does. It is like an invisible loop where the scenery of your life occasionally shifts. You get a new desk or a new car, but your emotional destination remains exactly the same.
And that is the exact paradox so many people face.
Right.
And here is where the frustration reaches a complete boiling point for most of us. You recognize the loop.
You see the walls.
Right. You wake up one day and you decide, okay, I am finally going to break free from this. You spot a golden opportunity to create a sustainable, independent system of wealth, or, you make a really hard resolution to change a deeply ingrained destructive habit.
A habit that has just been holding you back for an entire era of your life.
Yeah. So you muster up this massive burst of motivation. You start sprinting in a completely new direction.
You can feel the momentum building.
You really can. And then, without any warning at all, you experience this violent snap.
The rubber band effect.
Yes. It is as if an invisible rubber band is anchored directly to your spine. And the further you try to run from your baseline, the tighter that tension becomes.
Until you are inevitably forcefully yanked right back to where you started.
It is exhausting. But the insidious nature of that self-sabotage is that it happens almost entirely below the threshold of your conscious awareness, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You find yourself inexplicably retreating to familiar comforts. You suddenly lose interest in the new endeavor, or you encounter a sudden wave of unforeseen circumstances.
Like a sudden dill out of nowhere.
Or a sudden interpersonal conflict, or an illness, something that conveniently forces you back into the old, comfortable routine of mere survival.
And we rationalize it, right? We blame external factors.
We always blame the outside world. But if you look closely, the pattern of retreat is just unmistakable.
It is a pattern that drives people to the very edge of despair. I look at this cycle and I have to ask, why does this happen to us? Is it just a fundamental flaw in human willpower?
People always assume it is lack of discipline.
Right. Like, are we just lacking the necessary grit to see things through? Or is it simply the luck of the draw? Some people are destined to break free and others are just doomed to fail.
It feels that way sometimes.
It really does. Why is it that when you attempt to reach a higher level of financial security or personal fulfillment, the circumstances of your life seem to just conspire to return you to your previous state of anxiety or scarcity?
Well, I can assure you it is absolutely not a flaw in your willpower, and it has nothing to do with luck or fate.
So what is actually happening?
What we are observing when we see that rubber band snap back, it is the operation of a highly sophisticated, largely invisible architecture of the human mind.
An invisible architecture.
Yes. And this mental architecture is constantly interacting with the dense programming we have inherited from society. To truly understand why you snap back to your baseline, you have to fundamentally reconstruct your entire understanding of biological and energetic mechanics.
Wow. Okay, so we need to look at how our reality is actually constructed moment by moment.
Exactly.
Well, to figure out how to break this cycle, we are undertaking a massive exploration today. We are going to synthesize a vast constellation of concepts spanning quantum biology, the evolution of societal compliance, and the literal neurochemistry of the human brain.
It is a massive undertaking.
It is. The mission of this conversation is to expose the invisible societal programming that keeps you confined, and most importantly, to look at the literal biological mechanics of how you can rewrite the physical reality you experience.
And before we even touch the neurochemistry, we have to start by completely shattering the lens through which you view the physical world around you.
We truly do.
Yeah.
Because the foundational reason you feel hopelessly stuck in your physical circumstances is that you fundamentally misunderstand the nature of what your physical circumstances actually are.
You have to consider your immediate environment right now. You perceive your body, the chair supporting your weight, the structural walls of your house, as dense, immovable matter.
It feels incredibly solid.
It feels permanent.
Right.
But the biological and physical reality is that this solidity is nothing more than a highly convincing sensory illusion generated by your brain.
It is such a persistent illusion, though. I mean, if I hit my hand against a wooden table, it certainly feels like two solid objects colliding.
The pain in your hand definitely tells you it is real.
Yeah, exactly. But if we put that table and my hand under the most powerful microscopic observation available, if we completely strip away the sensory illusion of solid reality, what is the actual architecture we are looking at?
Well, you're looking at a vast constellation of atoms. The human body is composed of an incomprehensible magnitude of atoms, functioning together as an endless tide of cells.
Okay, an endless tide.
But here is the critical insight that shifts the entire paradigm. When you examine the interior architecture of a single atom, you do not find a solid, dense, microscopic building block. It's not like a tiny brick.
Right. That is what we are taught in basic school, that they are like little marbles.
Exactly, but they aren't. You find that the overwhelming majority of an atom is pure light, vast, vibrating emptiness. There is only a solitary, infinitesimal spark of actual physical matter, the nucleus suspended in a vast field of energetic probability.
I mean, let that sit for a moment. If the overwhelming majority of an atom is empty space and you are made entirely of atoms, you are literally more nothing than you are something.
That is the literal truth of physics.
We walk around feeling so heavy, so weighed down by our physical circumstances, the debts we carry, the friction in our relationships, the daily grind of our obligations.
It feels so dense.
But biologically, at the most fundamental level of reality, we are essentially walking, breathing fields of vibrating energy. The solidity is just a trick of the nervous system.
That is the precise reality. And because you are an energetic field rather than a fixed block of matter, you are entirely subject to the laws of energy.
Which means everything operates on frequency.
Everything in this universe, including your physical body, the recurring thoughts in your mind, your baseline emotional states, and your deep-seated concept of your own identity. It all operates at specific, measurable frequencies.
So the density or the heaviness you feel in your life.
It is simply a translation of the energetic frequency at which you are currently vibrating.
This moves us from physics directly into how we actually experience life. If everything is frequency, then our experiences must also interact with those frequencies.
Absolutely.
There is a classic demonstration in acoustics that illustrates this perfectly, right? If you place a tuning fork on a table, one that is calibrated to a very specific frequency, and you strike it, it begins to hum and vibrate.
It rings out.
Right. And if you place a second tuning fork nearby on that same table, and it is calibrated to the exact identical frequency, the phenomenon of acoustic resonance takes over.
The untouched fork will spontaneously begin to vibrate and emit a hum, purely by existing in the presence of the matching frequency.
It is wild to watch.
It requires no physical contact, no mechanical force transferring from one to the other. The shared frequency alone bridges the gap between them.
And when you apply that concept of acoustic resonance to human interactions, the implications are staggering.
But they really are.
The opportunities that come your way, the people who are drawn into your orbit, the life circumstances you consistently find yourself embedded in, they operate on the exact same principle of resonance.
We attract the realities that match our internal vibrational frequency. You are not out in the world getting things or conquering circumstances.
You are resonating with them.
Yes. If a circumstance is vibrating in harmony with your internal state, it naturally gravitates toward you.
Which perfectly explains the mysterious rubber band effect we were discussing at the beginning. If your internal frequency is chronically vibrating at the level of scarcity, fear, or profound self-doubt,
you will naturally resonate with external circumstances that validate and match those dense states. You will attract the unexpected bills, the relationships that validate your unworthiness, the jobs that drain your energy.
And if a massive opportunity comes along that vibrates at a high frequency of abundance, ease, and profound success, a fundamental mismatch occurs.
Your internal tuning fork simply cannot resonate with it.
Instead of a tuning fork, let us think about it in terms of biological homeostasis. The human body is designed to maintain a stable internal core temperature.
Right, a baseline.
Yeah. If you step into an intensely hot environment, like a sauna, your body perceives the sudden spike in temperature as a threat to its equilibrium.
It starts to panic, biologically speaking.
Exactly. So what happens? Your system initiates an automatic, unconscious biological response. You begin to sweat profusely to cool your physical system back down to its baseline temperature.
And that mechanism applies directly to your psychological equilibrium.
The psychological sauna.
Yes, exactly. If your internal baseline regarding your self-worth and financial identity is set to a state of constant, low-level struggle, which is highly stressful but deeply familiar, and a massive positive opportunity drops into your life,
The temperature goes up.
your system perceives that sudden spike in abundance as a threat to your psychological homeostasis. The temperature of your life gets too high, too fast.
So your psychological system essentially starts to sweat.
Precisely. It initiates self-sabotaging behaviors to cool your life back down to the baseline you recognize.
Wow.
You will unconsciously find a way to undermine the new business, drain the sudden influx of money, or create conflict in a newly harmonious relationship, purely to return to the familiar temperature of struggle.
We see this universally, especially when individuals experience a sudden, massive influx of wealth without any prior internal development.
Like massive lottery winners.
Exactly. Look
Yeah.
at the well-documented phenomenon of people receiving an astronomical financial windfall overnight. The overwhelming majority of these individuals will rapidly lose their newfound fortunes, finding themselves entirely bankrupt in a remarkably short period.
And they did not lose the money because of simple accounting errors.
No, they lost it because their internal homeostasis, their core frequency regarding their identity, never shifted to match the new external reality.
The external world was unconsciously forced to cool down to match their internal setting.
The reality you are experiencing in this exact moment is an exact delayed match to the frequency you are broadcasting. The external world is literally the mirror of your internal homeostasis.
It is a mirror you cannot escape.
But, that forces us to confront a massive, deeply uncomfortable question. If we are these magnificent, dynamic, energetic fields capable of resonating with incredible, boundless opportunities, why is the internal baseline for the overwhelming majority of the population set to such a dense, restrictive frequency?
Why is the default so low?
Yeah, why is the default temperature set to scarcity and anxiety? Where did this programming actually come from?
Well, to understand the origin of this restrictive programming, we must step back and examine the historical architecture of modern society.
Okay.
If we look back to the dawn of the industrial cycle, we see the foundation of the massive societal systems that govern our daily lives today. The educational infrastructures, the corporate hierarchies, the financial systems.
They didn't just appear out of nowhere.
No. And they were not organically formed to maximize human potential, joy, or creative independence. They were engineered with a highly specific objective in mind.
And that objective was mass production and predictability.
Precisely.
If you are building a vast industrial economy, your primary requirement is a massive compliant workforce. You do not want the individual components of your societal machines stopping to question their existential purpose.
Or dreaming of building their own independent systems of wealth.
Right. You need them to adhere to the schedule, respect the hierarchy, and turn reliably day after day like gears in a clock.
The societal infrastructures were meticulously designed to enforce compliance and routine over critical thinking and innovation.
And this really solidified after periods of massive global conflict, didn't it?
It did. Following those eras, when vast populations needed to be rapidly reintegrated into a stabilized, predictable economy, societal structures heavily incentivized a very specific type of behavioral compliance.
The incentivization of the standardized life.
Yeah.
The system offered a very appealing, very safe-looking package. You get the standardized housing, the standardized career path, the standardized retirement plan.
It looks like a great deal on the surface.
But the mechanism to secure that package required individuals to enter into long-term, multi-decade pledges of financial debt.
And that multi-decade pledge is the ultimate tether. It sounds entirely benign, even aspirational, to secure permanent residence through long-term debt.
The dream, basically.
Right, the dream. But the hidden mechanism of this structure is that it essentially traps individuals in a continuous, inescapable loop of labor.
Because you have to pay the debt.
If you must service the debt for the overwhelming majority of your adult life, you cannot simply leave the repetitive labor. And if you cannot leave the labor, you cannot take the substantial risks required to think entirely independently or build sustainable alternative systems of wealth.
You are locked into an equilibrium of basic survival and continuous output. The system is perfectly balanced. It keeps you just comfortable enough not to revolt, but just burdened enough that you can never stop running on the wheel.
Exactly. Because independent thinkers, people who operate outside of financial leverage, they disrupt the standardized flow that cannot be easily managed.
But if we are honest, the external debt and the structure of the workday, those are only the visible layers of control.
They are the symptoms.
Right. The most profound mechanism that sets our internal baseline is not external at all. It is deeply, intimately generational.
This is where it gets really profound. The environment we were born into is utterly saturated with the unspoken fears, the financial anxieties, and the chronic stress of our ancestors.
We do not arrive into this world as blank slates, perfectly insulated from our surroundings.
Not at all. During the dawn of our existence, our earliest formative periods as infants and young children, our brains operate in a fundamentally different neurological state than they do in adulthood.
The brainwaves are actually slower, right?
Yes, we exist entirely in a hypnotic, highly suggestible state, characterized by slower brainwave frequencies.
We are essentially walking sponges. During those early years, the critical faculty of the mind, the part that analyzes, doubts, and filters information, it has not even developed yet.
That lack of a conscious filter is the key to everything. When an infant or young child observes their caretakers arguing vehemently about a lack of resources, the child cannot rationally evaluate the situation.
Right, they can't say, oh, my parents are experiencing temporary financial strain due to a shift in macroeconomic policy, but my personal survival is secure.
Exactly. They don't have the capacity for that logic. Instead, they unconditionally download the raw emotional frequency of the panic.
They absorb it completely.
They absorb the relationship dynamics, the scarcity mindset, and the deeply held fears regarding survival directly into their own subconscious architecture.
They just drink it in, entirely unfiltered. If the caretakers raising you are constantly vibrating at a frequency of chronic stress, or if they hold a deep-seated, unspoken belief that life is an endless, grinding struggle,
That exact frequency becomes the foundational code written into your internal homeostasis.
we adopt the limitations of our ancestors as our own universal truths long before we even acquire the language to articulate what those truths are.
Long before we can even speak.
But hold on, I need to look at the implications of this. Because if we just absorb our parents' panic and scarcity mindset while we are in this hypnotic childhood state, it sounds like the game is entirely rigged from the start.
It can definitely feel that way.
Are you saying we are essentially just biological hard drives, doomed to endlessly play back the inherited anxieties of the generations before us? Because if my psychological baseline was set by someone else's stress before I could even formulate a sentence, that feels incredibly deterministic. Where is personal agency in a system like that?
That is the essential friction point of this entire conversation.
Yeah.
And the resolution to that friction requires us to transition from the philosophical concept of generational inheritance to the literal physical mechanisms of your neurobiology.
The actual brain tissue.
Yes, it is absolutely true that the initial programming is involuntary. You did not choose the energetic environment you were born into, nor did you consent to downloading the anxieties of your caretakers.
Nobody chooses that.
However, the hardware of your brain itself, the physical organ, is highly, incredibly malleable. You are not a static machine doomed to repeat the past, because your brain is a dynamic, constantly evolving landscape.
So, if we are not doomed to be carbon copies of our parents' stress responses, there must be a physical mechanism in the brain that allows for that change.
There is.
How does that malleability actually show up under a microscope? Let us move from the philosophical ideas to the physical tissue. What does this programming actually look like inside the machinery of the mind?
If a neurosurgeon were to open the human skull and observe the living brain, they would not see a physical, tangible manifestation of a toxic relative or a stressful job or a lingering fear of failure.
Right, there isn't a little dark cloud of anxiety floating in the skull.
Exactly. These anxieties do not exist as physical objects. They exist purely as invisible, structural neural pathways. They are chains of neurons that wire together to create a specific route for electrical impulses to travel.
I like to think of it like a vast, untouched wilderness. Imagine you are standing before an endless, pristine field of tall grass.
Great analogy.
When you're born, that field is largely untouched. But as you experience life, as you observe your caretakers reacting to financial stress with anger or panic, you begin walking through that
You
grass.
take the first steps.
Yeah. Every time that stressful reaction is modeled for you, and every time you internalize and repeat it, you walk the exact same path. Over a prolonged period, those repeated journeys flatten the grass, creating matted down grooves and deeply worn dirt trails in the field.
And that field of tall grass is the perfect biological metaphor for your neural architecture. Those deeply worn trails represent the physical neural pathways forged by your early environment and reinforced by repeated behavior.
They become the easiest way to go.
Because they are the paths of least resistance, they become your brain's default routes for processing reality.
So when something new happens,
When a new stimulus is introduced, a sudden challenge at work, an unexpected bill, a conflict in a relationship, your brain instinctively sends its electrical energy down those most heavily trafficked paths.
and for the overwhelming majority of people, those default paths are the routes of fear, stress, and basic survival.
Sadly, yes.
And traveling down those specific neural paths is not just a mental exercise. It produces a severe, immediate physical consequence. It is an entire neurochemical loop, isn't it?
It is a profound loop. The mind and the body are a unified, inseparable system. Every single thought you have triggers a highly specific cascade of chemicals throughout your entire biological network.
So every thought creates a physical feeling.
Operating consistently on those default pathways of fear and anxiety sends signals to your adrenal glands, flooding the physical body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline.
Your physical body is literally constantly marinating in a chemical state of emergency.
Preparing for fight or flight.
And simply because your brain is efficiently utilizing the deepest, most familiar grooves in the grass.
Exactly.
The physical toll of that is absolutely devastating. You are eroding your own health just by thinking the same thoughts over and over.
You're wearing out the machine.
But the reverse must also be true, right? If a fearful thought produces a physical chemical of stress, then forcing the brain to process a different perspective must produce a different chemical reality.
That is the beauty of the system.
By consciously adopting positive self-talk and deliberately forging new physical habits, you can stimulate the production of entirely different neurotransmitters.
You can actively trigger the release of serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin.
Literally changing the chemical composition of your physical body by choosing to walk a different path in the grass.
You are actively dictating your biological environment through the focused application of conscious thought.
It is incredible.
But to truly grasp why choosing a new path in that grass feels so incredibly difficult, and why we so easily default to the old ones, we must introduce a fascinating piece of neurological hardware.
Okay, what is that?
The reticular activating system, commonly referred to as the RAS.
Ah, yes. I like to think of the RAS as the bouncer of the mind. It stands at the door of your consciousness with a very strict velvet rope.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it.
Right.
Because at any given moment, your sensory organs, your eyes, your ears, your skin, are being bombarded by an incomprehensible magnitude of data.
An endless tide of information.
There are millions of bits of visual, auditory, and tactile information flooding toward your brain every single second.
It is too much.
If your conscious mind were forced to process all of it simultaneously, you would instantly collapse from overwhelming sensory overload.
So we need the bouncer.
We do. The RAS is a bundle of nerves at the brainstem that acts as the ultimate filter. Its primary critical function is to screen out the overwhelming tide of sensory data, allowing only a tiny, manageable fraction to reach your conscious awareness.
So how does the bouncer decide what gets through the velvet rope and what gets ignored?
It looks at the guest list.
And the guest list is written entirely by your deeply held internal beliefs, your baseline frequency, and those deep grooves in the grass.
Yes. The RAS only allows in sensory evidence that proves your current internal programming is true.
That is a monumental concept that basically defines human perception.
It dictates what you even see as possible.
If your internal narrative, those deeply worn paths you inherited, dictates that life is a continuous punishing struggle and that resources are intensely scarce.
Your RAS will actively, biologically blind you to anything that contradicts that narrative.
It will literally hide things from you.
You could be walking right past incredibly lucrative opportunities or interacting with people who could profoundly elevate your life, but your conscious mind will literally not perceive them.
Wow.
The RAS will filter them out as irrelevant background noise, focusing your conscious attention solely on evidence of scarcity, rejection, and struggle in order to validate the belief you already hold.
We experience this filtering mechanism in mundane ways all the time, don't we?
All the time.
Think about the classic phenomenon of buying a new car. Let us say you decide to purchase a highly specific vehicle, like a bright yellow car. Before you made that decision, you rarely noticed bright yellow cars on the road.
They were invisible to you.
Right. But the moment you purchase one, the moment it becomes relevant to your identity, you suddenly see bright yellow cars on every single highway, in every parking lot, at every intersection.
Did the city suddenly manufacture an endless tide of yellow cars overnight?
No. Your RAS simply updated its guest list. It instructed your eyes to stop filtering them out.
Exactly. The yellow cars were always there. Your brain was simply deleting them from your perception to conserve energy.
And now apply that exact same biological mechanism to your perception of wealth or love or opportunity.
That is where it gets serious.
If your internal guest list does not include abundance, the opportunities for abundance are the yellow cars you are currently blind to. They exist in your environment, but you literally cannot perceive them.
That is a staggering realization. It is the ultimate confirmation bias hardwired into our biology.
So if my RAS is diligently filtering out all the positive opportunities because my inherited baseline frequency is set to fear, how on earth do I update the guest list?
That is the ultimate question.
How do we take everything we now understand about the hardware of the brain, the default trails in the grass, and the chemical loops of cortisol, and actually rewrite the fundamental code?
We utilize the profound, validated science of neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity.
Yes. For a significant portion of modern history, the prevailing scientific belief was that the adult brain was a fixed, static organ. The assumption was that once you reached a certain stage of development, your neural pathways were essentially set in stone.
You were stuck with what you had.
Exactly. We now know that is entirely false. Neuroplasticity is the sheer biological capacity of the brain to reorganize itself, to form new neural connections, and to blaze entirely new trails in that field of tall grass, regardless of age or past programming.
But it takes immense deliberate energy, doesn't it?
It takes a monumental amount of energy.
If you want to stop walking the deep, comfortable groove of fear, you have to force yourself to step off the trail and walk through the highest, thickest, most resistant patches of the unmatted grass.
And it is not comfortable.
Not at all. The first few times you try to hold a thought of abundance or maintain a posture of profound self-worth, it feels exhausting. It feels unnatural. Your brain resists it because it is biologically inefficient.
But neuroplasticity guarantees that every time you force that new thought, you are physically laying down new neural tissue.
You are creating a new physical path.
You are. And, more importantly, by consciously refusing to walk the old path of fear, you are actively starving it.
Because the brain is ruthlessly efficient, right?
It is a ruthlessly efficient biological machine. It utilizes a process called synaptic pruning. It actively breaks down and absorbs neural connections that are no longer actively utilized.
So when you consciously starve the old pathways of fear by refusing to send electrical impulses down them, they literally overgrow and disappear entirely.
The structural architecture of your brain physically changes.
But to initiate that process, to blaze that new trail through the thickest grass, you have to utilize the most powerful psychological tool available to human consciousness.
The declaration of identity.
The power embedded in the words, I am.
The phrase, I am, is the ultimate command code to your biological system. It is not merely a descriptive statement. It is a structural instruction.
It is an order to the brain.
Yes. When you declare an identity, I am secure, I am capable, I am a creator of value, you are sending a massive energetic signal to your brain to begin the physical modifications required to align with that statement.
And we can actually observe this happening in real-time neuroimaging. When individuals start adopting positive identity-based declarations, truly attempting to link a high-frequency concept to their core sense of self, they are actively lighting up specific, crucial regions of the brain.
The prefrontal cortex, primarily.
Right, we are heavily engaging the prefrontal cortex. This is the region fundamentally linked to complex cognitive behavior, personality expression, and the processing of self-valuation.
By consciously repeating an identity of worth, you are physically strengthening the neural networks that determine how much value you place upon yourself.
Furthermore, you are activating the posterior cingulate cortex.
Yes, a central node in the brain's default mode network.
And that is deeply associated with profound introspection and self-awareness. It is fascinating to observe how these regions react under extreme circumstances. For example, when individuals experience a severe, sudden disruption in their lives, such as a profound physical health crisis or a near-death experience, the intense shock to the system often forces a spontaneous activation of these deep introspection centers.
The sudden proximity to mortality just completely shatters the illusion.
It wakes the individual up from the autopilot loop. The trivial anxieties of the inherited programming suddenly lose their grip, and the individual realizes with absolute clarity that they are the authors of their own physical and energetic state.
They realize the chronic stress pathways they have been walking are literally breaking down their physical bodies, and they consciously seize control of the steering wheel.
It is a radical awakening. But I have to insert a layer of caution here because we are walking a very fine line.
We are?
There is a massive critical difference between the hard biological science of neuroplasticity and the superficial, often damaging trend of toxic positivity.
A very important distinction.
If someone is facing genuine, severe hardship if their business has failed, or they are facing eviction, how does standing in a room declaring "I am abundant," not just a delusional lie to themselves, how do we distinguish between biologically rewiring the brain and simply living in a state of psychological denial?
That is a crucial distinction to make. Declaring a new elevated identity is absolutely not about ignoring or denying the reality of your current external circumstances.
Okay, so what is the difference?
To understand the difference, you have to understand the nature of physical manifestation and momentum. Think of your current life as a colossal, incredibly massive ocean liner traveling across the sea.
Okay, an ocean liner.
The current state of your bank account, the current health of your physical body, the current friction in your relationships, that is the massive momentum of the ship. It is the delayed physical reflection of your past programming and your past neural pathways.
The ship is incredibly heavy. It is moving in the direction of the old thoughts.
Yes. Because of the sheer mass of the ship, you cannot stop it or turn it instantly. When you stand on the bridge of that ship and declare, "I am abundant," while actively experiencing a state of lack, you are not lying about the present external condition of the water around you.
You are not pretending the ocean isn't rough.
Exactly. You are taking hold of the rudder. You are slowly, deliberately, with immense effort, turning the wheel inside the wheelhouse.
The outside world is dense. It takes time for the physical environment to reflect the new direction of the rudder.
It is a delayed reflection.
But by changing the internal frequency first, by holding that wheel steady despite what the ocean looks like, you command the RAS. You rewrite the bouncer's guest list.
You tell your brain, start hunting for the pathways, the people, and the evidence to make this new declaration a physical reality.
You change the internal cause, and eventually, inescapably, the external effect must align with the new trajectory.
That ocean liner analogy clarifies everything. You are steering the ship toward a new horizon.
But realistically, it takes a massive magnitude of conscious energy to hold that wheel steady.
It really does.
To stand in the face of external struggle, to look at a depleted bank account and consciously force your brain to blaze a new trail through the tall grass during your normal waking hours is just mentally exhausting.
It requires immense, continuous vigilance because your conscious, critical mind, the analytical faculty, is constantly arguing with you.
It is constantly pointing out the external evidence of your current struggles to prove that the new identity is false.
Exactly. The analytical mind is standing right next to you at the wheel saying, "Look at the water. We are sinking. You aren't abundant."
The friction is exhausting. But here is where the mechanics of the brain offer us an incredible advantage. There is a biological shortcut.
A massive shortcut.
A back door that bypasses the arguing analytical mind and leads directly to the subconscious.
There is indeed a window of profound vulnerability in our neurological programming.
And when does this window open?
This window opens during the transitionary brainwave states. Specifically, we are talking about the narrow corridors of time occurring in the moments just as your body is drifting into sleep, and the moments immediately after waking up before you are fully alert.
The magic of the threshold. What exactly is happening in the physical architecture of our brains during these transitionary moments?
During your normal waking hours, you are operating in a highly active, high-frequency brainwave state, characterized by rapid cognitive processing, logic, critical thinking, and the constant evaluation of external threats,
This is the state where the analytical bouncer is fully alert.
rigorously checking the guest list and rejecting anything that doesn't match your past programming. However, as your body prepares for rest, as you lie in the darkness and cross the threshold towards sleep, your brain waves dramatically slow down.
They transition from rapid patterns into slower, deeply relaxed patterns.
Yes, and as that frequency slows, the conscious critical mind, the part of you that argues, doubts, rationalizes, and constantly reminds you of your limitations, essentially goes offline.
It just shuts down for the night to conserve energy.
But your subconscious mind, the vast repository of your deep programming, remains wide awake. During this narrow transitionary window, your brain physically returns to that highly suggestible, sponge-like state of early childhood.
The exact same unfiltered state where we downloaded all of our initial limiting programming from our environment.
Precisely. Because the critical barrier is down, whatever thoughts, visualizations, or intense emotional states you are holding on to right before you cross the threshold of sleep bypass the analytical bouncer entirely.
They meet no resistance at all.
They are permanently imprinted directly onto the subconscious architecture of the mind. You are essentially pouring water directly into the sponge without any filter whatsoever.
That is a monumental revelation, but when you look at modern behavior, it is also deeply terrifying.
It is horrifying when you think about it.
It is terrifying when you realize how the vast majority of society utilizes this exact critical window of time. Think about the daily routine of the modern individual. What is the very last thing most people do before they close their eyes?
They look at their screens.
They are lying in bed in the dark, staring at a brightly illuminated screen, mindlessly scrolling through endless feeds of catastrophic global news, violent crises, or, curated social media profiles that induce intense, lingering feelings of inadequacy and jealousy.
Or if they put the screen down, they just lie there obsessing over the anxieties of tomorrow.
The unpaid bills, the looming deadlines, the stressful interpersonal conflict they anticipate at work.
They're taking the most malleable, highly programmable biological state available to human consciousness, and they're consciously choosing to saturate it with the absolute dense frequency of fear and scarcity.
They are effectively pouring toxic water straight into the deeply receptive sponge,
Biologically guaranteeing that their internal homeostasis remains locked at a state of chronic stress.
and then they wonder why they wake up feeling exhausted, anxious, and utterly stuck in the exact same loop. You are literally writing the code for a reality of endless struggle while your mental defenses are completely down.
But if we understand this mechanism, we can completely flip the script.
The potential here is boundless. If you take conscious, deliberate control of this threshold, if you decide to spend those final waking moments in a state of profound gratitude, vividly visualizing the reality you intend to create, and calmly declaring your new identity of abundance and health, you are bypassing years of conscious resistance.
You are planting the seeds of your new neural pathways directly into the deepest, most fertile soil of your mind.
When you fall asleep bathed in the assumption of your new elevated identity, your subconscious mind does not shut down. It spends the entire night synthesizing that information.
Integrating it into your neurological architecture.
And when you wake up and pass through that transitionary threshold again in reverse, you reinforce the new programming before the critical mind has a chance to wake up and argue.
You give a direct command to your reticular activating system before your feet even touch the cold floor.
You instruct it to seek out the opportunities, the people, and the circumstances that align with your newly established frequency.
Synthesizing this entire journey changes absolutely everything about how we approach our daily existence.
It really does.
When you absorb the reality of atomic structure, the origins of societal compliance, the malleability of your neural pathways, and the vulnerability of your sleep cycles, it fundamentally shifts your understanding of who and what you are.
You are not a static, helpless entity trapped by random external circumstances or the heavy baggage of your ancestors.
You are a highly dynamic, localized center of universal energy. You are operating an incredibly advanced, infinitely programmable biological avatar.
The world is not happening to you. The circumstances of your life are not a series of random punishments. The world is constantly, unfailingly responding to you.
You are the chief architect of your own existence.
You are the captain standing in the wheelhouse of that massive ocean liner, holding the rudder. You are the pioneer blazing new trails through the tall grass of your mind.
You hold the sheer biological and energetic power to completely alter the frequency of your reality, simply by taking conscious, deliberate control of the code you choose to feed your subconscious mind.
The architecture of your invisible chains, the societal programming that keeps you in the loop of mere survival, is only as strong as your unconscious willingness to continue walking the old, worn paths.
When you truly grasp the physical mechanics of neuroplasticity, the magnetic function of your energetic frequency, and the profound vulnerability of your transitionary brain states, you realize that the power to rewrite your entire existence has always been entirely within your grasp.
It was never outside of you.
Never.
Stepping into that realization is a profound, heavy responsibility, but it is also the ultimate liberation. It all comes back to that initial moment, waking up and pouring that morning cup of coffee.
The stagnation you feel in your chest.
The frustrating loop you feel trapped in it is not a permanent life sentence. It is not your destiny. It is just a delayed printout of an old, inherited program.
Which leaves us with a final, vital consideration to reflect upon.
What is that?
Well, if the physical reality surrounding you right now, with all of its apparent limitations, friction, and frustrations, is merely a delayed printout of the subconscious programming you unknowingly harbored in the past.
What entirely unimaginable, boundless reality will you wake up to in the future if you choose to take the wheel and rewrite your fundamental code tonight?